This video is on how to solve by factoring. We're going to use three different methods to factor and solve. First, we're going to use the two-term method. Then we're going to use the three-term method when the number in front of x squared is 1. And then we're going to use the three-term method when the number in front of x squared is not 1. Sometimes it's called the AC method. Okay, factor using the two-term method. Using the two-term method, step number 1 is try to make perfect squares. I put an x into the parentheses. That gives me x squared. And to make 16 into a perfect square, I put a 4 in here. 4 squared is 16. This equals 0. So now that we put it in perfect squares, now we have to put it into factored form. Two big parentheses. X goes into the first spots of each. X, X. 4 goes into second spots of each. 4, 4. 1 plus, 1 minus. Now that we factored it using the two-term method, we're going to solve using the zero multiply rule. If you have two numbers multiplied together and the answer is 0, one of these numbers has to equal 0. So what you say is x plus 4 has to equal 0, or x minus 4 has to equal 0. And solve for x. First one, I'm going to subtract 4, do the opposite to get the 4 to the other side. I end up with x equals negative 4. That's one solution. And for the second one, it's a minus 4, so I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And I end up with x equals 4. Solve by factoring. I factored using the two-term method, and I got x equals negative 4 and x equals positive 4. The second problem, factor, solve by factoring. These are three terms. I'm going to factor using the three-term method. Step number 1 for the three-term method of solving, find all pairs that multiply together equal the last term. 1 times 15 is 15. 3 times 5 is 15. Step number 2, once you have all the pairs, add or subtract one of these pairs to try to equal the middle term, a negative 14, a negative 15, and a positive 1 equal a negative 14. Negative 15 and a positive 1 equal a negative 14. So that's my factor. Two big parentheses, and this is equal 0. You always have x and x in the first spots because we have x squared. And then using my pairs, my pair is a plus 1, and a minus 15. Now we're going to solve using the zero multiply rule, just like we did in the previous problem. When you multiply two numbers and the answer is 0, one of these two numbers has to equal 0. So x plus 1 has to equal 0, or x minus 15 has to equal 0. When we solve for x, I'm going to subtract 1 to both sides, and I get x by itself. X equals negative 1. On this side, it's a minus 15, so I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to add 15. And I'm left with x equals 15. My two solutions for this problem are x equals negative 1 and x equals 15. We have one more problem. Factor the three-term method, but this time the number in front of x squared does not equal 1. So we're going to use the AC method. The AC method was step 1, multiply the first and second term together. This is called the A and this is called the C in the quadratic equation. A times x squared minus b times x plus c. A is 2 and c is 3. Multiply them together. 2 times 3 equals 6. Find all pairs that multiply to get 6. 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. How do I get a negative 1? The middle term is negative 1. How do I turn one of these pairs into a negative 1? If I put a negative 3 and a plus 2, if you add together a negative 3 and a plus 2, I get a negative 1. So that's not our factored form. That we split the middle with that. Using the AC method, we split the middle. We have and it doesn't matter what order you put the 2 and the 3. I'm going to put the negative 3 first. If I have a negative, I normally put it first. So I'm putting the negative 3 and negative 3x and positive 2x. So I put it first. See, this is negative 1x. It splits to negative 3x and a positive 2x. It still equals negative 1x. Bring down the minus 3 and bring down the 2x squared. So this is split the middle using the AC method. We split the middle. And now we're going to factor using the 4-term method because now we have 4 terms. Factor by grouping, it's also called. I group the first 2 parentheses. I group the second 2 parentheses. Make sure there's a plus sign between them. I factor out the greatest common factor of each group. Out of this first group, the only thing that divides into both of these is x. If I divide each by x, I'm left with 2 and x squared divided by x. 1x cancels and I'm left with an x. Here the x's cancel and I'm left with minus 3. 2x minus 3, what can factor out the greatest common factor? The only thing that can factor out is a positive 1 plus 1. If I divide each of these by a plus 1, I get 2x minus 3. Okay, so next we're going to factor out this parentheses. The parentheses has to be the same when you use this method. Do you see how the parentheses are the same? I'm going to bring this parentheses out. I'm going to factor out the parentheses. Bring it out to the front. I've divided a parentheses out. It's multiplied by whatever's left over. What's left over is x and a plus 1. Okay, now that I've factored, now I use the 0 multiplication rule and say 2x minus 3 equals 0, or the x plus 1 equals 0. And we solve for x. You have to do the add and subtracts first, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Then I'm going to divide by 3. It's 2 times 3, so I'm going to divide. It's 2 times x, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1x. 3 over 2 is 3 over 2. That's one solution. The other one is a plus 1. I have to subtract 1. And I get x equals negative 1. These are my 2 solutions for this problem. I hope this video helps you get through. If you need some more assistance with factoring, I have 3 videos on how to factor using each method. The AC method or the 3-term method. This method, the 3-term method, when the number in front of x squared is 1. And then the 2-term method. Thanks for watching.